Hey, what's up, guys? It's Randall from OddsJam back with you today for a video about how you can actually make money betting on the NFL. It's a very, very tough sport to win betting long term. But I've been sports betting for the last 15 years, have had a lot of success betting the NFL. Now, certainly, did I start out as a winning sports bettor? Definitely not. I actually spent my first 3 years sports betting, mainly NFL, losing pretty consistently. So, I mean, anyone who tells you that they, just started betting the NFL this year or last year and, they're winning money, probably not accurate. Or they're just getting very lucky. There's a lot that goes into it. There's a lot of things that I learned over those 3 years that I'm going to share with you today. So, going to go over my NFL betting tips and strategies. So let's go ahead and jump right in. So the very first thing that I think, and again, these are probably in no particular order. I would say these are just things that that I think can definitely help you win by betting on the NFL. Avoid betting with your heart. All right. We saw that picture. You can see in my background, we've got the Saints gear behind me. Big time Saints fan. Kamara on the picture. But you have to avoid betting with your heart. There's one thing that as a Saints fan, I use my knowledge of the team that I love to make me money. Ultimately at the end of the day, I don't care whether or not the Saints win or lose. I mean, I would love for them to win as a fan, but I use my knowledge of my team to help me make money. Actually, last year, I believe it was, I started out, I think 8-0 in their first 8 games. That was betting on them. That was betting against them. Again, at the end of the day, the Saints don't care that I'm a fan of them. They don't care that the Green Bay Packers don't care that you're a fan of them. The Indianapolis Colts don't care that you're a fan of them. The Chiefs don't. The Bills don't. All right. They don't care. You're a fan of the team. And if you have knowledge, I mean, great knowledge of these teams, use it to your advantage. Especially if you follow it, use all of that to your advantage. I hear so many people say, "Oh, I can't bet against my team. I'm a Packers fan. There's no way I can bet against Aaron Rodgers." Well, is it a good spot for the Packers this week? Because, one thing that you don't have to do is you don't have to bet on them every week, and so use that knowledge of your team to either make plays on them or against them. And again, use it to your advantage, but you have to avoid betting with your heart. You can't let bias creep in. It's very easy to bet on teams that you want to see win. That's something that always has existed. Never put too much stock into what happened the week before. All right. These are professional athletes in the NFL. There are going to be weeks where these teams look incredible. There's going to be weeks where these teams look pitiful. And you can never put too much stock into what happened the week before. In fact, I like to use that kind of more as an advantage for me, like in that following week. And a couple of examples, and again, depending on when you're watching this video, this happened in the 2022 NFL season. So that was this year as I'm recording this video. The Seahawks beat the Denver Broncos on Monday Night Football to start the year. That was a game that I was all over. I love Seattle. It was Seattle's Super Bowl. I mean, it just really was. And the very next week, they were catching 9.5 at San Francisco. Everybody loves Seattle again, thought that Geno was going to be the best thing ever. It was a classic letdown spot. They were on national TV. Everybody watched Seattle beat Russell Wilson. Denver probably should have won that game, probably actually should have covered 2 fumbles inside the 5-yard line. But nonetheless, there was that, instance where people were putting too much stock into that game the week before. Whereas all summer long, everybody said, Seattle's going to be the worst football team in the league. Couldn't wait to bet them in week 2 against the Niners. The Niners crushed them. Same thing goes. This is just another example. And I'm going to try to give some examples in this video to hopefully help. But, the Colts against the Jaguars were shut out in week 2 after, having a tie against the Texans. And they had the Chiefs coming up. And, again, this Colts team that a lot of people were high on, now nobody wanted a part of. The Colts were shut out. You're going to get a huge effort out of any team that's shut out the following week. The Lions, for example, were shut out last week. And again, this is, 2022 NFL season that I'm talking. So depending on when you're watching this video, may not be relevant, but the Lions were shut out against the Patriots 29-0. They're on a bye week this week. They play at Dallas the following week. It's going to be a great spot to back the Lions. Regardless of if the bet wins or loses, it's a great spot because they were just shut out. They were just embarrassed. So, never put too much stock into what happened the week before because, it can make betting the NFL very, very difficult where you find yourself continuing to bet on teams that are definitely, overvalued, or you're not betting on teams because they're undervalued. Bet on numbers rather than teams. This is the hardest thing, I think, for people to grasp. Professional sports bettors, guys who bet on the NFL, guys who are successful in the NFL, they're betting numbers. They're not betting on teams. Now, certainly, there are some teams, if you will, that you may look to back throughout the season because of, how well they're playing or whatever. But ultimately, you're betting on numbers, or at least you should be. And again, my thought process in, this Colts game that I gave as an earlier example, the Colts were shut out against Jacksonville. The look ahead line for that game was Indianapolis plus 3.5 or plus 3, depending on where you looked. When that line opened up, the Chiefs were minus 5.5, minus 6. Huge overreaction. So again, now all of a sudden, I know I'm getting a team in the Colts at plus 6 that has some value. Again, I'm not worried. I'm not talking about just the team at this point. Like, sure, the Colts were shut out. I knew I wanted to bet them. But the point is, I was betting on that number of plus 6, which I ultimately ended up getting 7 later in the week because people continued to bet the Chiefs. But again, I was taking that number because that number the week before was 3. So again, betting on numbers rather than teams always will work out. Avoid betting recent trends. So, you see it all the time. This team is 5-0 against the spread to the over to start the year. Or I'm sorry, 5-0, to the over to start the year. This team's 5-0 against the spread. And you'll hear all of that, being hyped up all throughout the week. And it's very easy to get sucked into that. For example, the Atlanta Falcons are 5-0 against the spread as I record this video. They play the Niners on Sunday. Sure, they could go to 6-0, but if you look at their games, they really shouldn't have covered against Tampa Bay the week before, which was last week. I don't think they really probably should have covered against the Rams either. So, they are 5-0, but that's a trend that's been talked about a lot this week. There was a trend, about Seattle playing in all of these games that go over the total. And again, their first 2 games actually went under the total, I believe. I know the first one did. I think the second one did as well. And so, they've had some games that have gone over. But again, avoid betting those recent trends, because at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, if you look back at like what the against the spread record was for these teams or what the over-under record was for these teams, it's going to be about 50-50 every single year. It just always seems to happen that way. Avoid recency bias. And this kind of is similar to, the one that I mentioned of, not putting too much stock into, what happened the week before. And so again, recency bias, this Colts example is one that I know I keep going back to, but it's a very good one because the Chiefs were on Thursday Night Football against the Chargers the week before. They looked, so-so, but the Colts looked awful. And so, putting, again, too much stock or kind of recency bias of what a team has done recently may not actually be correct in what they're actually capable of. So you can never put too much into what actually, has happened recently. Now, you can put some stock into it, but you have to be very careful in that, because again, that's all kind of baked into the line, if you will. The books know that. They know how these teams are playing. I mean, they set these lines. The NFL has the sharpest lines of any sport. So to think, you're getting an edge, in some of that regard of the bias or whatever, it's much, much harder to get that. This is probably my number one pet peeve here. Avoid betting teasers and parlays. I mean, these are just bankroll killers in the NFL. When these lines are set by these sports books, they're done so with the thought that people are going to parlay these, people are going to tease these. Just take a look in the NFL one week. And I mean, it's not going to be every week, but you'll see a lot of weeks. There are a lot of lines that are, -9.5, a 6.5 point teaser, takes that down to 3, but a 7-point teaser, which is what a lot of people do, that takes it down to 2.5. The books know that, they're setting these lines with the thought that people are going to tease and people are going to do money lines. And so avoid betting them at all costs. I do bet parlays, from time to time, but it's more of a, if I have a risk-free bet or a free bet, I don't ever, parlay money from my bankroll on teasers and parlays. I used to, and, lo and behold, it's always one team. I used to love, I think years ago, I would get 14.5 point teasers, and I would think, oh man, this is great. I can tease all these teams 14.5 points. You look at the box scores, somebody always gets blown out. And so I would just say avoid teasers and parlays at all costs, unless, again, like you said, free bets, I will throw those on there, or risk-free bets, but I'm definitely not doing it with any real money from my bankroll. With that can come chasing losses. You lose a bunch of teasers, you lose a bunch of parlays. Never chase your losses. That is the number one, I think, mistake in all sports bettors make. And it's very easy to do in the NFL, especially with how they have the schedule set up, because, you have your 1:00 Eastern games, you have your 4:25 Eastern games, then you have your Sunday night game, then you have your Monday night game. So if you lose in the early slate, you're going to chase in the later slate. If you lose there, you're going to chase in the Sunday night game. You lose the Sunday night game, you're going to chase in the Monday night game. So you have to avoid chasing your losses. And I'm guilty of it. I've done it before. Anybody who tells you they haven't, they're again lying to you. It's very easy to say. It's much harder to do. But you have to avoid chasing your losses if you're going to profit in the NFL, because you'll never profit in the NFL if you're just continuing to kind of spray the board. And that leads me to my next point. You don't have to bet every game. Okay. The sports books have the edge. They have the ability to put up lines for hundreds of games. College football Saturday, college basketball Saturday, NFL Sunday, obviously not 100 games, but they have the ability to just put up every game. And we as sports bettors, we have to actually decide what games we're going to bet on. And so you don't have to bet every game. Just because, the Sunday night football game is on, you don't have to place a bet on that. And that's very hard for people. And then I've always, I have a friend who, how can you watch a game without having a bet on it? And my answer to that is, if I don't have an edge, I don't feel the need to bet it. And then I can still watch games without, having a quote unquote sweat. So it's very important to remember, you don't have to bet every game. Just this year in the NFL, the last 2 primetime games, excluding this one from Thursday night, if you want to, we'll count it, to last 3 Bears Commanders. I didn't bet that game. I didn't have an edge. The Monday night game, before that Thursday night game, it was Kansas City and the Raiders. I didn't have an edge. I didn't bet that game. Bengals Ravens Sunday night football. didn't have an edge, didn't bet it. So you don't have to bet every single game. That's the luxury we have as sports bettors. You know, the sports books have to put up numbers on every single game. And then we get the ability to pick. But too often you spray the board, you bet far too many games. And then the last one, I think that one is very, very important. You have to understand that you're not going to win every single week. It's just not going to happen. I was coming off of week 5 in the NFL of the 2022 season, 1-4 week. It's going to happen. You're going to lose. But the thing is, you can never get too high. You can never get too low. You have to just kind of stay level-headed. Understand you're going to have great weeks. Understand you're going to have horrible weeks. And to never, again, get too high or get too low. So I appreciate you guys watching this video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, hit the like button, hit subscribe. I'm going to do a few more videos about tips and strategies across other sports. But NFL is obviously popular, and people love to bet it. So as someone who has been successful betting the NFL now for the last 12 years, after losing my first 3 years, I thought it would be nice to share some tips. So feel free, any comments, put those in there below, and we'll answer them for you. And you can also email me, Randall@oddsjam.com. So appreciate you guys tuning in, and I will see you later.